What up, guys? Slow2 back again, and I just made the switch from this to this. Was it worth it? Alright, before we get started, I want to let you know that we are not sponsored by Fanatec or by Heusinkveld, so my opinions are my opinions, and that's what I'm going to share with you today. Also, please like, comment, subscribe, and hit that notification bell.
Okay, guys, so this is the Fanatec CSL Elite load cell pedals that I've been using for approximately a year. Very good pedals. I've enjoyed them. I think they're a good starter or a mid-range pedal. Previous to this, I had the Logitech G29s. Quickly, I wanted to get out of those. I found that they were a very start-stop, on-off type switch for the brake pedals, where this load cell pedal gave me the opportunity to modulate a lot better. Overall, the quality's good. It's a great product, but I really felt it was time to move on to the next step. So as you can see, I moved over to the Heusinkvelds. They are the Sprints. They are tried and true across the industry. People talk about them as being some of the best pedals out there, and they have great software to support that. I just unboxed them. This is my first time really taking a look at them, and I can tell you right off the bat, the build quality is much, much better here. When we look at the base plate over here is a very solid metal, right? Whereas on the Fanatecs, you can tell it uses, I can't even tell you what the material is, but it's a very light material, very light feeling, just doesn't feel like it could hold up to the abuse that the Heusinkvelds will. Okay, so the next step is I'm going to put these on the rig, and I'm going to take a little bit of video of how they look on the rig, and then after that we'll go ahead and test them, and I'll give you my feedback on what I think about the pedals so far.
Installation is complete. It took me about 3 hours. I'm going to put a picture right here so you can see what it looks like. If you use a base plate like I have, you're going to find that both pedals mount similar to your rig. However, that's when things change. The first adjustability difference that I noticed was the Fanatecs, once they're mounted onto your rig, there is no adjustability on the angle in which your pedals sit. On the Heusinkvelds, you can adjust that angle, so that gives you the opportunity to either adjust them to create more leverage or maybe to put your legs in a more comfortable position. On the Sprints, you're going to find that you can adjust the heel plate up and down also. You can also flip the pedal face itself. That way it's easier to get your foot on and off the pedal depending on the size of your foot. That adjustment is not available with the CSLs. For the throttle pedal on the Sprint, there's also 3 other things you can adjust on there that you cannot adjust on the CSLs. One, you can adjust the throw of the pedal itself, so how far it will go in and out. Also, how much pressure is required to actually depress the throttle. And then lastly, you can adjust the preload of the spring, which is how much force you initially have to put on the pedal to start getting things going. And that really does help simulate a real throttle in a real car. On the Sprints, you can also adjust the preload on the brake, which will simulate the pad to disc travel that you would find on a real car. That cannot be done with the CSLs. The one thing that is similar between the two is both come with a bunch of different rubber inserts so that you can make the brake pedal harder or softer depending on how you like your brake to feel. Before I finish the hardware portion up, there is one negative for the Heusinkvelds that I found. On my pedals, the last 10% of the throttle made a pretty bad squeaking noise. Check it out. Sounds pretty bad, but in the manual it does say that you can put some WD-40 dry lube on it, and hopefully that will take away that sound. Is it a deal breaker? Well, no. With the headset on, I really don't even hear it, but if you race without a headset, it might be something to consider. Alright, let's take a look at the Heusinkveld Smart Control software that comes with this. It's a very intuitive program. I've enjoyed it so far, and it gives you a lot of options. First thing you're going to do, you're going to plug your pedals in. It's going to pick up the pedals right away. I had no issue there. Then you're going to go up here to Sim Pedal Sprint, right? And then you're going to go to Calibration, and then you're going to start calibration. I don't have a clutch, so I'm going to unclick that, right? Then I'm going to go to Next Step. See it remains uncalibrated there. right? The first thing it tells you to do is make sure that basically your feet are off the pedal so it's not reading anything, right? You're going to go to next step, and it's going to say press the throttle all the way down. I'm going to do so, and I'm going to go next step, right? Then it's going to ask me to do the brake, the maximum force desired. From what I understand, 65% or 65 is the highest that it can read anyway, so that's what I put it up to, approximately there. And I went ahead and go next step, and then save calibration, and then you're done with your calibration. All right. After that, you'll click on profiles, and you can see here that this is the profiles of what the software is reading based on your pedal inputs. Now, again, I didn't use the clutch, so this information here is kind of irrelevant. You could set it however you choose to, but I'm just going to speak to the brake and throttle portion. So for the braking, the max force, I went ahead and put down the 65. The bottom dead zone, that's referring to, let's say if you rest your foot on the pedal, it will ignore the first 7% of pedal pressure. That's what it was set on. That's what I kept it as. I don't have any issue with that. Although, you could have it lower if you wanted to. Okay, so the next portion is the curve type. It'll start out as linear, however you can adjust that. Linear worked for me. I did find, however, after going through all these different settings, which there are a pretty good amount that you could use as a baseline, I used the -1 and it creates this slight curve. It worked really good with LMP2, which at the time I was driving. But you can mess around with those to try to find points where maybe it's harder to get into ABS or it's harder to lock up the tires. You can also go in here and adjust every 20% of this and how you want it to react. Now, if I push down the pedal, you can see it traces out where your foot is and pedal pressure wise on the brakes. Now, this is really good when you're go ahead and try to figure out how you want to get this all set up. You can do it in game, which makes it even better. Okay, for throttle, the first thing up is the top dead zone. That's referring to the percentage up here that you want to ignore. I have mine set all the way up to 17%. I did that because coming from the CSLs, I was not used to having to push the pedal down so hard and maintain that much pedal pressure. And I found that I had a tendency when I was on the straightaways to slightly let off the pedal and it wasn't registering full throttle. So maybe that's something you would want to play with. All right. The bottom dead zone, again, is ignoring that bottom portion of the pedal pressure. I didn't adjust that from factory, but you could if you needed to. The next thing up is the curve type again. I stuck with linear. I felt that I was used to feathering the throttle. I didn't really feel that I needed to do anything different. Again, this is primarily set up for what I was doing with LMP2. So you may want to change that. That's up to you. But you'll notice it's still pretty much similar things. And the reason you would want to set up those throttles is maybe you don't want traction control to kick in at certain points. So you can adjust that curve. You could also set it up so that maybe you just don't want tires to break loose if you don't have traction control. So the point of all of this, and the reason I wanted to show you all this, is because it just shows how dynamic the software can be. I didn't really need it for maybe all it's worth, but it certainly has a lot of potential, and maybe in the future I'll be using it a lot more. So on the Fanatec software, you can do a lot of these things. You can set the max that you want the brakes to read, the minimum you want the brakes to read. You can obviously calibrate the pedals itself, but the profiles is really what separates them when it comes to software. Your ability to store profiles, your ability to manipulate the curve itself, the ability to manipulate pretty much everything you want to make those pedals work just right for you. Okay, so let's answer two big questions. So first up, do these pedals make you faster? No, they don't make you faster. But the equipment is better, that's for sure. And with that being said, because the equipment is better, as your skills progress, you'll be able to utilize that and maybe become quicker. But the pedals themselves are not going to make you any faster. Matter of fact, I would say if you're already on a pair of CSL Elites and you're looking for that extra edge, the first thing you probably need to invest in is some instruction. Once you get that instruction and you feel like you're utilizing the CSLs to their full potential, then maybe it is time to switch up to a better pedal. The next question is, are the Heusinkvelds worth an extra $500? There's definitely 3 things you're not going to get with that $500. First thing you're not going to get is a clutch pedal. Now, I didn't use a clutch pedal. It didn't matter to me. However, Heusinkveld does sell a clutch pedal, so you could add that onto your order, but just be aware that it is an additional cost. The second thing you're not going to get is an ecosystem. Now, again, that might be something that you don't care about, but Fanatec is to sim racing basically what Apple is to phones. It's a whole ecosystem between the wheelbase, the wheel, and the pedals, and some people like that. To me, it doesn't seem to really make much of a difference. Just understand that it doesn't all connect together. The last thing you're not going to get with your $500 is skills and excuses. When the skill runs out, it's easy to blame the pedals or whatever equipment you want to blame, but when you have the sprints, you pretty much have one of the best pedals on the market, and it's really hard to blame anything but yourself. That could be a good thing. That gives you the opportunity to realize where your skill level really is and go out and get the training or keep practicing and get where you need to be. On that note, if you haven't seen my Driver 61 class review, you should go check that out. I'll provide a link below. That way you can take a look at it. What you are going to get with the Sprints is amazing pedals, great hardware, amazing software, maybe a little squeaky noise that you don't want, but I think in the big picture, that's something I could look past. On a final note, I did find a little bit of improvement in time once I put the Sprints on. Now, I reluctantly say that because, again, I want to fall back on the fact that you need to hone in your skill level. But the one thing I did find is confidence on the brake. I wasn't bad off of the CSL, but the Sprints gave me just that little bit of an edge to brake deeper into a turn and feel comfortable trailing as I continued on through the turn. Now, I'm just an average iRating driver, and as I continue to move forward and try to hone in my skills, it certainly will be nice to have the Sprint pedals around so that as my skill level improves, I can use them to their full ability. There are certainly pedals that I plan on keeping for a long time. So these pedals were right for me, but are they right for everybody? Well, no. Some people might not want to spend that kind of money. They are expensive, and maybe you're just starting out. If you're just starting out, I would highly suggest you get into some Fanatec CSL Elite load cell pedals. They're great pedals to start off with. They're not an on-off switch like you'll find with things like the G29 pedals. So maybe the Fanatec's are the way to start out. But if you've been around for a little bit and you do have that money sitting around, you cannot go wrong with the Heusinkveld Sprints.